Hello composers and creators, it's Zach Heidi, and today I'm really excited to be showing you a short animated film score I just finished. So I wrote the score for a channel called Pivotal Animation run by a company called Team True Potential. I found this group of animators a while back on Twitter. If you remember when I did my composing in real time, the very first one I did was for a woman levitating her cat. That was actually the same animation group that did this one. When they asked me to do a short score for this fight sequence, I said absolutely because I know how good their animations are, and it came out fantastically. I cannot wait for you all to see the finished result. Now, because this score was about a 4-day process, I'm not gonna show you the entire process of composing in real time. Instead, I'm gonna show you kind of markers at the end of each day what I've completed. I'll walk you through kind of the process of how I originally looked at the picture, what I chose to do in terms of tempo, harmonic choices, and then ultimately orchestration and the final mix. If you find this kind of content helpful, do me a huge favor and leave me a like and subscribe for more. It really helps out the channel. And if you want to help me continue making videos like this, please do check out my Patreon at the end of the video. I've got a bunch of rewards as a thank you to anybody who is supporting me there. So without wasting another second, let's jump in. I'm going to show you the progress I've done at the end of day 1 so you can see sort of a frame of reference, and I'll talk about how I got started. Okay, so it's day 1, and here's what I've got to show for it. Basically what I did today was just look through the movie kind of in a general sense, try and focus on some large-scale decisions, some hit points, and then to establish a basic tempo and meter for some of the more action-y areas of this movie. This isn't always how I start off my scoring process, but in this case we're working with like an action fight scene, so it seemed appropriate to start with tempo and meter first and kind of work our musical material from there. So before I actually play it, let me just zoom into the markers so you can see what I've kind of done here. It's all color-coded because that makes me happy. Basically, I've laid out some of the main transitions, places where I anticipate there being musical changes. Some subtle, some dramatic. So we've got our opening shot here. Then we have a moment where kind of the feet come in. So this is gonna be for the paladin. So I'm looking for probably a main theme for him, something even emotive. Then he stops. When it cuts to him, I think we should have him recognize that something's wrong, some little tension in the music. Then we go over to the rogue, who is scavenging. She looks up, she sees him, maybe we'll have something. This is a nice shot, it's a very showdown kind of thing, so I'm picturing some tension kind of being accentuated in this moment. Then I wrote begin, which is when I actually like the cue to kind of start. Maybe even just having a lead in to the actual moment. Now from here, you're actually gonna hear some percussion beds that I created. They're very basic, just kind of playing with stuff for now, just seeing what sticks. And the meter varies a little bit, but the tempo really does not. I think there's maybe 3 tempo changes in total. So in full screen, you'll notice right there, we have an impact, our first impact, the first strike of this action sequence. So that's where I wanted the cue to actually really begin kicking in with the percussion. So we have it kick in there. Now what I tend to do is I'll pay attention to the cuts and look for the next most important cut. That was a pretty significant cut there, right where he throws that fireball. So that's another important moment. And then somewhere around here, maybe when he swings again, we have another kind of moment. So I work backwards. I kind of tap out tempos, experiment a little bit. So I would kind of work through. What I wound up finding out is that if we actually work this around this tempo, so this is 165. So I found that if we did 165, we had a couple nice little lineups. There. There. There-ish. There. So it kind of syncs up generally enough, and that tempo feels right. Now 5/4 was kind of what was sticking in my head, and I also noticed that if I chose 5/4 as my meter, you'll notice we get even some cooler lineups. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it syncs up actually in some really nice ways. So that's what I started with. So let's hear that with the percussion now and what I kind of did. So here I wanted a little gap right when she catches that. She kind of like composes herself for a second, but I also needed that to line up with right about here when they initiate the fight again. So I moved from 5/4 into 3/4 temporarily. So you'll hear that again one more time. Composing. And the next spot has some interesting time signature changes, and that's primarily because I wanted to line up with some of these hits. Again, keeping the same tempo, I noticed some really interesting things. So if we look at this, you'll see action, 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 action. So I tried to see if I could find a meter that would actually complement this and be consistent. And it turns out 7/4, starting with 3 going to 4, alternating back and forth, 3, 4, 3, 4, really works out nicely. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1. So it works out perfectly. So let's hear that section. Now here, I wanted him to go for a swing, and I wanted him to kind of just you could feel his anger, but we wanted a tension build, because what's gonna happen here in the scene is there's this epic grab that happens. So I wanted to build up to that moment. So I ducked the percussion back down, and then I have a build that leads up to it. And that part goes in 3 again. So it sounds like this. And then a headbutt. And now we kind of need something different, I think. We have a transition where we're kind of more aware of the rogue's perspective again. They get headbutted. We need to feel like they were in shock a little bit. So let's just look at what happens here. Keeping the same tempo again, because that's ideal. Now they're fighting from a distance, so there's going to be some magic involved, so we're not as hand-to-hand. So I wanted to take the physicality of that away a little bit and make it a bit more cerebral. Let's hear that. Now here is a very important moment. This is where the paladin kind of charges up into this epic thing. So that's a badass moment. That is a surefire badass moment, and I was told in my notes that I really need to accentuate that. So I went for something, for now, very Terminator-y, something really just heavy sounding. So I actually lowered the tempo for this moment, because sometimes that fast-paced tempo, it implies fast action, but we have this huge, lumbering, powerful creature, man creature. So you want to accentuate that. So I'll show you what I did here. And a big riser to kind of help push that moment, right when he opens his eyes. So riser. Looks. Now we kind of just keep, I can't even talk over my own music. We kind of just keep this pulse going through this duration. I thought it was fine because the perspective is that he's unstoppable, so it needs to just feel unstoppable and immobile. So here we go. Now this kind of marks the end of the action, for the most part. All of the actions kind of stop. Now there's a bit more subtlety that goes on. So most of this percussion bed, you'll notice after that moment, kind of dies off. There's a couple little hits here and there, but that's primarily it. Now we have a moment where she gets hit. I had a couple shakers, cymbals, things to incorporate that she's just kind of trembling on the ground. Now she's being sneaky here, so I wanted to incorporate some ambience and some eeriness. Not really locked to tempo here. Now that moment is important because that's the stab that actually winds up killing him. It's poisoned. It's a poisoned dagger. So I wanted to really surprise the audience with that moment. So we still have this perspective of something's wrong. Now we're gonna get the reveal and a little swell. Now we know that he's in trouble. So we have this little building percussion. And then a big epic hit. Now here, we're gonna move out of the percussive stuff into the much more melodic stuff. So there's nothing really here, mostly just a pad as a placeholder. You'll see that pad kind of simmers around for a little bit. And then we're gonna have a little cliffhanger at the end. And that's it. So that's what I've done for the first pass. Now I'm gonna have to go in and find some musical material to support all of this action, particularly in the spots that are ambient that don't have any percussion. So I'm gonna brainstorm for that, and then we'll come back with day 2. Okay, so here we are at version 2, day 2, even though it was spaced out by a couple days, and you can tell we've got quite a lot more in here. I kept most of the rhythmic ideas that I wanted. I kept the tempo for the most part, but I spent a lot more time defining the sound because rhythm kind of defines the pulse, but we need to define the emotions of each scene. So let's just go through all this bit by bit and talk about some of the things I think are here to stay and things I might potentially change. We don't have melodic stuff here yet, it's just still our rhythm. Melody starts about here, if you call it melody. All right, let's start with just that section. So I use the rhythm as a very strong starting point. We're not working with melodic stuff per se, and it honestly doesn't matter too much just because it's action. I mean, we're a bit limited with the kind of vocabulary we can introduce. We're looking to just create a pulse and energy and drive, and that's the primary focus. We accomplish that with the rhythm. Now we're just supporting that with the harmony. So let's take a listen to the strings first. We got a string riser. So again, just supporting the kind of rhythms with wham and a little ostinato. Let's go over to the brass and hear how they're working. Okay, so kind of just landing on the downbeats of this kind of 7/4 thing. And then we have horns at 12, so 12 French horns, just for extra push. You know, this is like, I'm throwing everything at the wall here, so you're gonna hear this choir later. But the 12 horns give it a lot of energy and kind of make it feel very climactic and dramatic. We also have woodwinds that are pretty much just doing runs, and those runs are to support what's happening on screen. So we have some scales and we just have some rips. Now, I'm mostly using ensemble patches here because none of this is going to live players. The effect has to just be a well-produced sound. It doesn't have to sound totally realistic. It just needs to sound big. So we're using ensemble patches where we can, also for expedience. So all together one more time and then we'll move on. All right, let's go through that spot. So it's mostly strings. We have a couple of I like to use the octatonic scale, which is a combination of half and whole steps. It gives it this kind of unresolved feeling and also just kind of moody, and I like that. Then we introduce choir as we go over here because he's about to transform. So we wanted to have something that feels like, oh crap, something epic is about to happen. So we introduce the choir and the brass. Now, I may change certain things, like I said, I'm not totally sure, but this is just to kind of set the basic ideas. Let's move right along. Okay, so there I know that I want to have a little bit more when she gets hit. I wanted to have a bigger kind of emphasis on that. But the idea here, like I said with the percussion, is that he's unstoppable and he's like the Terminator essentially. So it's just a consistent pulse, ostinato, slower tempo. One more time. Notice, wait for the gong to end. You'll notice that I didn't do anything when it's got her on screen and her shock, because right now the emphasis needs to be on him and the fact that he's unstoppable, not on her fear necessarily. It's almost scarier that it doesn't react to anything else. The only thing it reacts to is when the shield comes up, when she throws something at him. That's when we get an extra swell when it's like, oh man, he's actually unstoppable. That's also when we introduce our 12 French horns in a really low register. Would probably be impractical for real players, but who cares for virtual instruments. So 12 French horns and a male choir. Okay, swell, ambience. Little choir for extra drama. So through that whole section and then the upcoming section, we're primarily aleatoric, meaning we're like non-pitched. We're doing with kind of like randomness, dissonance. We lost our sense of place because he can't find her. So it should sort of feel like lost in a way. So we're playing with lots of stuff. I have some great patches that do lots of aleatoric weird stuff like this. You'll hear there's a little bend. Just little swells, subtlety. And then he gets stabbed. He realizes he's been poisoned. And she realizes that she has an opportunity. Okay, let's go through that, because this part has a lot of changes, actually. So when he realizes he's been stabbed, we have a little pause, and we have a zhang, which is kind of like anticipating the final showdown that's going to happen. So one more time on that. Electricity comes through as he's trying to heal himself. And then the French horn sort of represents her. In her mind, she's a hero, I guess. Everybody would imagine they're their own hero. So the French horn kind of represents her perspective now. And maybe even the audience's perspective that, oh, he's done for. Modulation. We pull down with strings. Now, I really like that moment. That made me realize I think I'd like the bassoon to be her instrument. So the French horn's kind of been the guy's instrument in a way, but I think bassoon is a nice representation. Bassoon kind of has a little bit of an otherworldly feel. In a certain register, it can sound melancholy, but also a bit mysterious. And I don't know, it's something about it just seemed to work really well. This feels like the losing ending almost in a way. But we're going to have a little moment of surprise at the end, so we need to have some tension that I'm going to do with the strings later. Again, this is just a big placeholder. I like to set these textures gradually and see what they think. So I'm going to send this off to them, see what they think, and then we'll come back with a third version. Okay, so it's day 3, and I'm really excited because something about today, everything just kind of clicked together. I realized what I wanted to do that I wasn't doing, and things that I'd done that I wish I hadn't. So I made those tweaks, and I'm really happy with how it's turning out now. I only got 2 very small revisions back from the client. They asked that the Terminator-y thing with the electronics be brought out a little bit because they really liked it in the initial draft. And they asked that there was a moment that wasn't very clear in the animation where he's pulling back his hammer. It's supposed to be a really big, epic moment in the animation, so I have to support that for the ultimate finished animation. I also got a little sneak preview of what the animation is going to look like, and it looks insane, so it was very inspiring. And some of the sound design, which kind of helped me in preliminary thinking. Let's take a look at what I did from the beginning, because you haven't heard that, but we've got a full pass all the way through. All right, let's take a look at that spot. So we basically got some light tremolo strings just to kind of give a very gentle entrance. It's a very common technique in film music, just a way to kind of lightly begin a cue. His character, I was initially going to treat him like the hero, but from what I got from the description, he's not really a great guy. Like, he thinks he's fighting for justice, but he's just kind of a brute. So I wanted him to feel heavy. So we have that kind of thing as his motive, which you'll see will come back later. When his feet come in, introduce him. Now he sees something, so we gotta have a little tension. Okay, she doesn't have a theme per se, but she kind of has an instrumentation choice, which is like English horn, bassoon, yeah, mysterious, quirky almost sound. Very stark contrast to his character's theme. Now when she sees him, we get a hit. She readies up. And then modulation, that's new. Okay, so a couple changes there. I had that modulation. I wanted to have a modulation. So this is like, the battle hasn't quite begun until it got that shot in the distance where they're engaging more. So I wanted to have it feel like kind of layers. So that modulation helped. It's a modulation tone, actually. So, tone setting. Not much rhythm either. And a swell. Now we introduce the rhythm. Pull this early. I realized that that French horn thing would be perfect for when they actually engage weapons instead of right after, which is what I had before. Now that feels more appropriate, like he's looking for her, so there's a bit of a dip, and then it swells up when he realizes she's right behind him. Hit. Hit. I thin this out a little bit. Okay, that's the DSE array, so I'm trying to lightly imply that she's screwed, or so we think. Now dead silence here like I had originally. So, dead silence there because I thought it'd be more impactful, and then I actually had that hit for when he's appearing a couple frames later. It was just too early, it was hitting too in sync with the visuals, and it's just too much to process at one time. So I wanted to have visuals, boom. Boom. This is pretty much the same. Okay, just a little like defeated, kind of is like a defeated motive there. Idea. Also made the idea with bassoons and English horn to be her. That's new. That's the swell I was talking about. That swell is pretty commonly used in this whole thing. It's basically, I'm just doing clusters of different brass instruments. This part's all pretty much the same. Little hit there. I might thin that out, I'm not sure. This is a little faster to keep the pace slightly faster than the drama on screen. I want to add harp there. I'm gonna add harp. Here's our ending. Okay, so I didn't have much time to get that kind of surprise ending swell because it cuts pretty quick. So that was a bit tricky to program, but basically I'm implying the same motive that was here in the beginning, if you remember, right about here. That's kind of his gesture, so when it comes back here, it's implied that he's not done for. Really proud of that orchestration there, actually. So we've got some woodwinds going on the top. It's super messy right now. Like, it has to be cleaned up. We've also, I think, got a church organ that's hidden away somewhere. Yeah, like I said, this whole thing is like uber messy right now, but that's okay. We're gonna clean it up. We've got our brass swells, we got strings. Again, Dies Irae is the motive if you didn't pick up on that. This isn't even locked to a tempo right now. I got the idea, I had to run with it. Sometimes that's my process where I'll just not work to tempo, then lock all the MIDI, then adapt the tempo, then quantize the MIDI. It's a bit painful, but it does help me kind of get freer ideas so I can focus on being in sync with the picture without committing too early to tempo. That's sort of what happened in some areas here. You know, I had certain tempo things. I was so in the groove all the way through that I realized it was just losing some of the ebb and flow that I wanted it to have. This isn't just a hybrid track. This is hybrid orchestral, so we need to kind of support orchestral moments here. Sometimes when percussion drops out, it actually makes it feel more dramatic in some ways than just being a groove throughout. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna wait and see what they say, and then if they approve of it, I'm just gonna go ahead and polish the final mix, tweak any necessary things, and we'll hear how it sounds. So the final mix was in fact approved. They were very happy with the finished results, as was I, and I'm so excited to show you the final animation, but instead of spoiling it here, I'm gonna link it in the description so you can support these animators who helped hire me and also make this video. By checking it out on their channel. If you do check it out, do me a favor, leave a comment on their channel and let them know that I sent you. Again, I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks again to everybody who's a patron. You help me to create this kind of content, and I deeply appreciate it. You can learn more about my Patreon in the description. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.